Our world is a big and beautiful place, but when you dig into its history, you'll find some of the most unbelievable circus freaks who actually existed. From the bearded lady to the human skeleton, we're counting down the most bizarre and unforgettable acts to ever appear under the big top. These weren't fairy tales or myths. They were real people, each with a story that stunned and amazed audiences around the world. Some were born with rare conditions, others turned their uniqueness into a career, but all of them left a mark on circus history that still echoes today. Let's start off with number 15, Nelly Keeler, aka Little Queen Mab. Nelly was born in Indiana in 1875 and entered Barnum's spotlight as a child. She weighed only 11 ounces at birth, and by age 3, she was just over 2 feet tall and weighed 11 pounds. P.T. Barnum promoted her as the Indiana Midget and Little Queen Mab, often exhibiting her beside giants like Colonel Routh Goshen for contrast. She quickly became a star attraction. However, at 12, Nelly experienced a growth spurt, eventually reaching 5 feet, which ended her career as a midget performer. By 16, illness left her bedridden. She spent much of her later life as an invalid, and at 28, she died of tuberculosis. Fearing grave robbers would disturb her remains, her family had her buried in a burglar-proof vault. Though her career was brief, Nelly's story remains a haunting example of how fragile childhood fame could be in Barnum's world, remembered not only for her small stature, but for the tragedy of her short life. Number 14, the White Giantess of Massachusetts. Harriet Bowen became one of New England's most amazing circus attractions, promoted as the White Giantess of Massachusetts. Born in Fairhaven, she reached 783 pounds, a presence that filled circus tents and museums alike. She performed with Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey, and appeared in the Wild West shows of Buffalo Bill and Pawnee Bill. From the Bowery to St. Louis, her size alone commanded the stage. Yet her story was not just weight and spectacle. Traveling life taxed her body, and exhaustion crept in with every performance. A rare surviving photograph taken near her death shows a woman both weary and proud, her gaze still defiant. "Fame is the perfume of heroic deeds," Socrates once said, and Big Hattie carried her fame with dignity, even when her body could no longer keep pace. She died at 50, remembered not for beauty or cruelty, but for a commanding presence that remains etched in circus history. Number 13, the Human Fountain. Mortado was among the strangest performers of his era, a German soldier whose story dissolved into legend. First reported in 1928, he was promoted as a Hindu fakir, shocking audiences with holes drilled through his hands and feet. At first, he threaded knitting needles through them, but soon he created his most infamous act, pumping water through the wounds, earning the banner name, the Human Fountain. Berlin audiences gasped in awe, and he expanded his performance to crucifixion stunts, nailed to a cross before stunned crowds. By 1930, Mortado appeared at Coney Island's Dreamland Circus sideshow, then vanished from records after 1932. Some said he was preparing for the 1933 World's Fair. Others whispered darker fates under Nazi rule. His disappearance remains a mystery. "Some things are true even if they never happened," Vonnegut once wrote. Mortado's act embodied that paradox, both grotesque and mesmerizing, a reminder of how the line between horror and wonder is thin indeed. Number 12, longest bearded lady. Madame Deve carved her place in circus history with the longest beard ever recorded on a female performer. Well, we're talking about an extraordinary 14 inches long. Her origins remain blurred, some sources placing her birth in Kentucky in the 1840s or 1850s, even her name shifting between Mary and Jane. Married to her manager, J.W. Deve, she stepped into fame in 1884, appearing at Huber's Museum in New York, and later with Sells Brothers Circus. By the 1900s, she was traveling widely, joining the Campbell brothers in 1906 and Yankee Robinson in 1908. Wherever she went, her beard drew fascinated crowds. Her husband, ensuring her marketability, never faltered. In 1912, while traveling with the Patterson shows, she fell ill in Olwine, Iowa, where her career ended abruptly. "The beard may be long, but so is the story," quipped one promoter, and Madame Deve proved it. She remains remembered as one of America's most striking bearded ladies, a woman who turned spectacle into legacy. Number 11. The world's smallest mother. Doleta Boyin stood just over 3 feet tall, and her name evoked the image of a living doll. She married Major Boyin, also a little person, proudly carrying his surname. Yet what defined her was not the banner outside the tent, but the pride she took in her 2 full-sized children, born by cesarean section. Publicity photographs showed her posing with them, the contrast striking yet tender. She was hailed as the world's smallest mother. After Major Boykin's death, she remarried Cherokee Buck, a 6-foot trick roper who had left the bearded lady Baroness de Barksey for her. The unusual pairing fascinated audiences, but it revealed her magnetism. "Love is composed of a single soul inhabiting 2 bodies," Aristotle once wrote, and Doleta's life embodied that truth. She worked circuses throughout her days, died at 67 in Joplin, Missouri. More than a novelty, she left behind the image of a mother whose pride never bent to spectacle. Number 10. The Ohio Giant. Noah Orr, born in 1836, grew into one of Barnum's most enduring human marvels. Standing 7 feet 3 inches barefoot, he appeared closer to 9 feet when dressed in military boots and a hat, a detail promoters seized upon. By the 1850s, Orr was with P.T. Barnum's American Museum, his enormous frame and gentle temperament drawing large crowds. He toured both America and Europe, promoted as the Ohio Giant, a living symbol of strength. Later, he joined the Lilliputian Opera Company, performing in Jack the Giant Killer, where his great height surrounded by little people created a striking contrast. Audiences laughed, marveled, and paid eagerly. Away from the stage, Noah was remembered not as a braggart, but as a kind, soft-spoken man. He died in 1882 in Marysville, Ohio, where his grave still identifies him as a giant. His story remains one of Barnum's most memorable attractions, celebrated for both size and spirit. Number 9. Baron Pouchy. Peppino Magro, remembered as Baron Pouchy, was born in Sicily in 1894 and promoted as the world's smallest perfect man. At 15 inches tall as a youth, he first gained notice after surviving an earthquake, his tiny body protected beneath rubble. Coming to America, he joined Ringling Brothers and later became a fixture of Coney Island's Dreamland sideshow. For more than 15 years, Pouchy entertained audiences not just with stature but with personality. Unlike many billed only for difference, he cultivated flair, flashy clothes, racetracks, women, and liquor. His humor was sharp, his presence bold, sometimes too bold for management, costing him work. In 1931, he married Mavis Lane, a 5-foot woman, but his constant flirtations strained the marriage. By the mid-1930s, he returned to Ringling Brothers, performing until the close of his career. "Fortune favors the bold," Virgil once wrote, and Pouchy lived by it, small in frame, but towering in defiance, style, and unapologetic appetite for life. So, what do you think about him? Number 8. The Brothers Magri. The Magri brothers, celebrated Italian little people of the 19th century, carved out fame across the circus world. Count Primo Magri, known as Count Rosebud, stood just 2 feet 8 inches tall and married Lavinia Warren, widow of the renowned Tom Thumb. His brother, alternately called Giuseppe or Ernesto, was promoted as Baron Magri or Baron Littlefinger. Together, they crafted an act that mixed charm, wit, and novelty, captivating audiences worldwide. Primo and Lavinia toured internationally, performing before royalty and commoners alike. Their presence on stage combined romance and spectacle, further fueled by their social titles. Eventually, they retired to Middleborough, Massachusetts, where they opened a roadside attraction that welcomed visitors for decades. Beyond performance, their lives reflected resilience and adaptation. Though defined by stature in public, they built stability in private, balancing love, showmanship, and survival. The brothers Magri left behind more than spectacle. They became part of sideshow history's fabric, remembered for wit, presence, and enduring legacy. All right, now let's move to Number 7. Lazarus and Joann's Baptista, Colorado. Lazarus and Joann's became some of Europe's earliest recorded conjoined twins. Lazarus was fully formed and charismatic, while Joann's, his parasitic twin, protruded silently from his torso, undeveloped, unable to move or speak. Together, they toured courts and fairs, performing before kings and queens, including Charles I and Henrietta of England. Lazarus lived boldly, even fathering kids, though he often concealed Joann's beneath a cloak in public. Yet Joann's carried an unexpected result. When Lazarus killed a man after enduring mockery, he faced execution. Judges hesitated, for condemning Lazarus meant killing Joann's, an innocent who had committed no crime. That paradox saved him. Their existence embodied spectacle, fascination, and legal mystery. "We are bound to each other in ways invisible to the eye," wrote James Baldwin centuries later, and the Colorado twins proved it. Bound in flesh, one through strength and one through silence, they became a haunting reminder of humanity's strange dualities. Number 6. Princess Nelly and Major Stanley Jobear. Stanley Jobear sailed to America and built a career from his stature, recorded at just 3 to 4 feet tall. He partnered with Nellie Frances Way, 30 inches in height, skilled with a violin and a sewing needle. Together they became Princess Nelly and Major Stanley Jobear, a married act blending humor, music, and curiosity. They performed with the Otis Smith Circus and the mighty Doris Cole. Francis Ferrari Show, traveling countless fairs in their custom truck that doubled as a home. Life on the road demanded grit, but it offered them freedom. The Depression ended most bookings, and they retired to Waterford, Connecticut, in a tiny 10 by 30-foot house, a stage reduced, but still theirs. Nellie died in 1941, Stanley in 1958. Their names faded with time, but their story remains. "We are all fools in love," Jane Austen once wrote, and in a world built on spectacle, the Jobears turned difference into partnership, devotion, love, and survival. Number 5. Vivien Wheeler. Vivien Wheeler was born in 1948 with intersex traits, and doctors decided to remove her male organs in infancy, raising her female. She also inherited a family trait carried by her mother and grandmother, a thick, natural beard. As a child, she performed in sideshows, her whiskers displayed as spectacle. Later, she tried to shave, marry, and live quietly, but her relationships faltered. She had 2 children, both delivered by cesarean section and later placed for adoption. By the 1980s, Vivien returned to the stage under the name Melinda Maxey, her beard flowing dramatically. Guinness World Records repeatedly recognized her for the world's longest female beard, measuring between 11 and 17 inches. In 2010, her story went global when her biological son tracked her down, splashed across headlines. Adopted son discovers his mother to be a bearded lady. Vivien Wheeler remains a legendary figure, her beard not just curiosity, but a reclaimed identity that defined her life on her own terms. He was a good guy. Number 4. Freak Love. Few circus romances stirred hearts like the love of Al and Jeanie Tomi. Jeanie, born Bernice Evelyn Smith in 1916, entered the world with no legs and twisted arms, yet she learned to walk on her hands and perform acrobatics. Passed between guardians who exploited her, her life changed in 1936 at the Great Lakes Exposition, where she met Aurelio Al Tomini, a giant nearly 8 feet tall. Despite the staggering contrast, she stood only 2.5 feet. They fell deeply in love and married. Marketed as the world's strangest couple, they toured together before retiring to Gibsonton, Florida, where they built the Giants Camp, a fishing lodge that became a haven for fellow performers. Al died in 1962, but Jeanie carried on, raising 2 adopted children and running the lodge until her passing in 1999. Love is composed of a single soul inhabiting 2 bodies, Aristotle once said, and the Tomanis embodied that completely. Number 3, Commodore Nut. In 1862, P.T. Barnum discovered George Washington Morrison Nut, a young dwarf performer working English sideshows. Dissatisfied with his treatment, Barnum paid his parents $30,000 for a contract that promised both education and a career. Rebranded as Commodore Nut, he quickly became a star. Yet the greatest drama played out beyond the stage. Barnum already employed Charles Stratton, famous as General Tom Thumb, and rivalry between the two erupted. At the center was Lavinia Warren, another dwarf performer whose affections both men pursued. Tensions grew so fierce they even fought physically. When Lavinia chose Stratton and married him, Nut was heartbroken. Withdrawn, he avoided romance for years, his disappointment casting shadows over his fame. Still, Commodore Nut carved a place in circus lore. He wasn't remembered only for stature, but for charm, wit, and kind human nature. Number 2, the Yankee Yogi. Charles Griffin seemed determined to try it all. Born in Missouri in 1859 and raised in Iowa, he launched a career that spanned nearly every sideshow skill imaginable. He swallowed swords, breathed fire, bent his body into knots, performed illusions, and even worked with puppets, styling himself Professor Griffin or the more exotic Yankee Yogi. At just 16, he was already filling opera houses with curiosity. His career took him through Hilliard and DeMott's Circus, Sells Brothers and Pullman and Mack, eventually landing him at the Paris Pavilion in France. Later, he managed sideshows for Bob Hunting's Circus before joining Ringling Brothers in 1899. His wife Octavia added mystique as the Serpent Enchantress, dazzling crowds with snakes. Together they formed a duo that enthralled audiences. Griffin spent his final years back in Iowa, passing in 1914. "Variety's the very spice of life," wrote William Cowper, and Griffin embodied it, an entertainer who lived more than one lifetime on stage. All right now, let's end this with Number 1, Before Blaine, Blondini. Michael Costello, better known as the Amazing Blondini, created a stage persona by blending the names of Blondin, the legendary tightrope walker, and Houdini, the master escapologist. Born on a fairground in Ireland, spectacle was in his blood. His mother worked as a fortune teller, his father as a strongman, and his sister performed on the trapeze until tragedy struck. Blondini began his own act at 13, billing himself the world's youngest sword swallower. He soon expanded into fire-eating bed-of-nails stunts, feats of strength, and daring escapes. His flair for drama drew international attention with acts that tested belief. He blew himself up inside a coffin, hauled a car with his teeth, and once endured 78 days buried alive. Long before David Blaine, Blondini had already pushed human endurance into the realm of spectacle. Part showman, part daredevil, he defined himself by danger and audacity, leaving audiences convinced they'd witnessed the impossible. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and we'll see you very soon.